Council. I'll call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a meeting, an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city is Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act in conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall of this meeting room facility as required. Disclosure of meeting recording processes is posted in the meeting room. A participant sign-in sheet is available for use by any citizen addressing the council. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and are asked to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Kaler.
Here.
Colterman.
Present.
Miller.
Here.
Singleton.
Here.
Streisand.
Here.
Tanyas.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
We have a quorum present.
All right, thank you. Our first 6 items make up this evening's consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion.
We're together on that one.
We have half a motion. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your vote. Hey, Kelly, could you pull John's down?
He's gonna vote when he's not here, so.
Excuse me. No, the other, in middle.
Sorry.
He comes back, he voted against it.
How do you do that?
All right. Please call, please play, thank you.
Kaler, voting in favor. Kaler, Tanyas, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
All right, thank you. We will adjust one item here under the administrative items, just for travel purposes. This is item number 1, an administrative item. We'll take that up next. Consideration of a request to waive Section 13 transfer to the franchise agreement with Allo Seward LLC. Greg?
Yes, we received a request from Allo to, pursuant to our franchise agreement with them, to transfer that franchise essentially, and I know we have Andrew Vinton here, legal counsel for Allo, so you can hear it from the horse's mouth since he drove all the way out here. But essentially they're transferring it from one corporate entity to another corporate entity, wholly owned approximately by the Allo Corporation. We're not selling it from Allo to some shadow corporation or something else. It has no interruption or anything. This is once they get settled into a community, they're established, they transfer this as part of their internal holdings. Andrew can provide more specifics than that.
Well, sure, appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you, City Administrator Butcher. I think that you did a pretty good job explaining what this arrangement's doing. We're assigning this agreement to a wholly owned affiliate entity. It's simply to support further financing. There's no change of control, no change of management. Our service won't change, our branding won't change. Simply done to facilitate further financing so we can continue to develop, upgrade, expand our network. And the request is specifically to waive the 60 days prior notice requirement before transfer can be made pursuant to the franchise. That just aligns with the pace of our financing arrangement. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Andrew. Any questions from the council? Would there be a motion?
So moved.
Motion to approve the request. We have a second from John. Is that John second? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanyas, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
All right, thanks, Andrew. We'll go back to public hearings. First public hearing at 7 p.m. This is tax increment financing TIF application by the Seward County Chamber and Development Partnership, SCCDP. We have our TIF attorney, Andrew Willis, with us this evening to walk us through this application. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks. Good evening, Mayor, council members. The application before you tonight, Seward County Chamber Development Partnership, building that they own on 285th Street, south of Birch, east of Highway 15, north of the seminary. It's partially occupied currently. It's got DHHS and Goodwill already tenants, and then the remaining space, the other 2 suites essentially about 4,200 square feet. The goal here is to remodel that, to build that out, to create a space for daycare. That's the ultimate goal of this project. The primary reasons for TIF, obviously just, construction costs are high and it takes a lot to renovate and remodel. But partially with this project in particular, and you can see it in the plan amendment on the site plan, the access, to bring another access point off of the street. So that will help with drop off, pickup times, and just generally with flow of traffic. So that's the primary TIF expense. There's also the demolition, site prep, all those typical TIF expenses as well. But in this, that's probably the biggest piece of those TIF dollars and the main reason why they're, from a infrastructure and public improvements perspective, that this is needed. Again, interior is about 4,200 square feet. From discussions with the county assessor, the valuation, so the current valuation, again, this is an existing building. So the current valuation on that building is $777,483. Based on the build out, it's anticipated to be about a little over $970,000. And that's what's gonna generate about $31,400 in TIF. We looked at it, there's about $49,000 of eligible costs, so plenty of eligible costs. Obviously, they're handling all of them, and again, the primary piece is that improvements, the additional access point off the street. They're intending to start construction as soon as possible, assuming they get approval here. Preliminary estimated total cost of the project is about $321,000. So out of that, $31,400 of it would be supported by tax increment financing. Now I would note, Jonathan did mention the other day, we have this, when I calculated this, we used a 6.5% interest rate. The interest rate looks like it's probably actually going up, as interest rates tend to do right now. The way this, and I'm probably getting ahead of myself, it's in the redevelopment agreement, but the authorization would be up to $31,400, subject to that interest rate. So obviously, if you raise the interest rate, you're probably gonna lower the principal a little bit because it's only supporting 15 years of increment. It's the same amount of increment no matter what. Just I would note that again, that's the way we've always looked at these is the whole amount, and then you present value it out. But if they need a higher interest rate, you're just gonna get less, and it's the same dollars coming in either way. So we're looking at the statutory elements we always look at for every project in a redevelopment plan amendment. They already own the site, so there's no public acquisition or disposition of property. From a population density perspective, it's the renovation of a portion of a commercial building, so we don't really have an issue there. Land coverage wise, existing building, so no issues there. Traffic flow, street layouts, and street grades, again, that's one thing we look at, and the primary purpose of this TIF project is traffic flow, enhancing the traffic flow for this project, and so bringing in one additional access off of the street. There will be an expansion to add some additional parking stalls. John can talk more about it if needed, but again, I think part of the issue there is talking to tenants, making sure that there's adequate parking, and there will be. It'll meet all zoning requirements. This is the daycare is a permitted use within the I-1 district, is the current zoning. I would note it's been through public hearing at Planning Commission last week and CRA, and they both recommended approval of this project. And then I guess quickly I will go over I'd like to go over the cost benefit analysis. Again, we look at this, first of all, I kind of already went through the numbers, about $777,000 of current valuation. Anticipated based on the build out, that'll be $970,000, so you got $192,000 of incremental value that's created by this project. So that'll be about $3,300 of tax per year, tax increment per year. That's what'll support that over the 15-year period. Not only do we have the direct access in the cost benefit analysis to the project itself, utilizing the TIF to help finance this, but with this particular project, they've really noted the need for daycare in the community. So we see they've highlighted really the public benefit beyond specifically the project, and hopefully that will be a bigger good to the community as well. The need, it will fulfill at least part of that need for additional childcare in the community. Again, as stated in the application, there was, I'm gonna forget my numbers here now. Oh, here it is. So the current county child service gap, approximately 189 children. So we're above licensed capacity by 31%. So definitely a need in the community. And again, this should help, it should be, with an impact on other employers, employees, and again, we see this as a positive all around, providing that service that's needed. Again, facilitating better traffic flow, better points of access throughout the project is the primary purpose. Otherwise, I kind of see this as, plenty of eligible costs, fairly straightforward from scope and again, on the smaller side. So it really does look good under the community development law. Quickly, I think there's not much to highlight in the redevelopment agreement. That it really just takes what we just went over, the amendment to the redevelopment plan, and puts it into that contract that SCCDP will sign. Again, the main things here: minimum valuation to hit the TIF numbers, $970,329. That was based on discussions with the county assessor. Completion date would be next year. Intent is to get started, but they have it done by next year, so we think the effective date for TIF would be January 1, 2025, starting that 15-year clock. And the amount would be, again, as I mentioned, up to $31,400 to be adjusted based on, that was based on a 6.5% interest rate. And I think with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, I think I did mention it, but just to go over the uses more specifically, I guess I'll do that real fast. So the eligible uses we identified, you got demolition, small amount, $4,000, grading, $5,000, some site prep, and then that's the street ingress, egress, that's about $20,000. Then you got architecture and engineering fees, legal fees, and then the TIF admin fee. So again, out of that 31.4, 20,000 is for those street infrastructure improvements. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions from the council? And you covered A, B, C.
Yep, so that would have been, that's all the ABC right there.
Okay. Just want to make sure we didn't miss anything.
Thank you.
It is a public hearing, so you'd open up the public comment portion of the public hearing. If anyone from the public wishes to speak on this item, please come forward to the podium at this time. Jonathan, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jonathan Jenks, Seward County Chamber Development Partnership. Just to dovetail off of Andrew's comments, I think there is a big identified need for childcare in the community. One of the questions that was asked is this a decent location for childcare? You know, it's south of town, in that I-1 zoning district. We actually think this is a really ideal location in a place that's unserved currently within the community. We particularly think this is well located because of its proximity to other industrial types of users, as well as that commercial highway corridor. And we actually track from Tenneco south to Walmart. We have over 1,000 employees there within basically a 1 mile radius. And many of them are young parents that need childcare, affordable, reliable, licensed childcare. And so we're excited about this opportunity, would appreciate your consideration for support to help really with sort of a safety aspect of this development, which is in secondary ingress egress, which has been requested both by Little Cubs Daycare, the child care service provider, as well as by DHHS and Goodwill, thinking about the anticipated, we'll have about 50 employees between all three employers that will be tenants, and about 60 families is sort of the max capacity that they could serve in that facility. So you think potentially 110 cars. You need to make sure you have good ingress and egress out of the site, and then enough parking. And Tim's been great to work with to ensure that we're making sure we're hitting all those parking requirements as well. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. Any questions for Jonathan? Seeing none, thank you. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item, please come forward. Seeing no one else, I will close the public comment portion of the public hearing. We turn to the item 1D. This is consideration of a resolution approving the redevelopment plan amendment and adopting a cost-benefit analysis for the redevelopment project. Is there anything else you want to add on about that?
Nope,
Andrew?
I think, so this, first resolution again is the redevelopment plan amendment. That is the first part of that gets the project in the overall redevelopment plan. Assuming that's approved, then the second piece would be the contract implementing that with SCCDP.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Any questions or comments from the council, or would someone like to introduce the resolution?
I'll introduce the resolution.
All right, The resolution has been introduced and is designated as resolution number 2023-11. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted? We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
All right, item E, this is consideration of a resolution approving the redevelopment plan agreement for a redevelopment project, including the issuance of TIF indebtedness for the redevelopment project and other such actions under the community development law. Any questions or comments from the council? Would someone like to introduce the resolution?
I'll introduce the resolution.
All right, the resolution has been introduced and is designated as resolution number 2023-12. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
I'll move.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Next, we will skip to item 2 under administrative items. Consideration of an offer received to purchase land within the commercial rail campus development area, legally described as Lot 3, Seward Rail Campus PUD First Edition, corrected plat, City of Seward, Seward County, Nebraska. Correct.
Yeah, I was thrown off by the exit there. Let's see, I gotta make sure. Yep, that's okay. Let's see. On my iPad here, and my computer will not connect. Just,
And so the first item 2A is going to be consideration of a purchase agreement with MyCo Holdings LLC. And then item 2B will be consideration of an ordinance to direct the conveyance of real property to MyCo Holdings LLC.
so we received an offer from Myco. This is Kellen Myers, one of his subsidiaries, looking to expand in regards to his seed company within and holdings within the rail campus. Right now, I believe he's on non-technical rail campus property that was surrounded by the rail campus now, but looking to expand on that, and through negotiations back and forth through Kelly, came up with the offering here. This is the lot that if you come in on Worthman Boulevard and you reach the intersection of Pine, where you would go north to Levander, Pet Source, and others, this would be the southwest corner lot coming off of that intersection of Pine. Like their extensions, will just be small utility extensions over from the corner to this property, and then some sort of small connection into the roadway to give access to the property owner and then to build internally. So, that's kind of where we're at, correct, Kelly?
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Consistent with the negotiation guidance you gave me, and closing hopefully within 30 days after we publish notice.
So do we suspend this?
Oh, you just suspend the reading on this one, it's not 3 readings, it's not an annexation.
Gotcha. Are there any questions or comments from the council? A reminder, the 2A, the first item would be consideration of a purchase agreement with MyCo Holdings LLC.
So we can move approval, or
Yeah.
you need to introduce?
Move approval of 2A, and then separate from that would be the ordinance.
I so move.
Second.
We have moved for approval, and we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
And then 2B would be the ordinance. So you're welcome to have discussion or questions, otherwise someone can introduce the ordinance.
I'll introduce the ordinance.
All right, an ordinance to direct the conveyance of real property to MyCo Holdings LLC to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form, to provide for a time when this ordinance shall take effect. The ordinance has been read by title and is designated as ordinance number 2023-20, and the title is hereby approved. I need a motion to dispense with statutory rule.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
This is ordinance number 2023-20. Would anyone like to move that this ordinance be passed and adopted as read?
Also move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, again, the question is, shall ordinance number 2023-20 be finally passed and adopted? Please register your vote. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
Alright, thank you. Next, move on to item 3. This is consideration of a claim from Laura Asplin, 438 Grand Avenue for personal property damage in the amount of $2,993.31. Greg?
Yeah, pretty straightforward claim here. This is a claim in regards to a sewer line repair and replacement issue that took place on a service line. When they got into the service line problem and found that it was backed up and clogged and needed to be repaired, they noted a route that they believe came from the main and then went up into the service line that caused the issue. I'm not gonna speak to the liability of it, I'm just noting what the issue was. Our recommendation is just send it on to insurance and attorney for disposition. If you have any questions, I think Laura did a good job of writing out her claim and providing all the good information. We did let her know it was on tonight's agenda. I don't think she had anything else, I don't see her here tonight, to add on it. We did also contact Brandon Cole, Water Wastewater Superintendent, get what information he had available and maintenance records and stuff, so they'll all handle that through insurance. So that would be our recommendation. Correct,
Make a
Shelley?
motion to move it to insurance.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, 4, Kaler, Tanya, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
Alright, item number 4, this is consideration of a poisonous and flammable gases storage permit for AmeriGas propane at Tractor Supply site. Tim, you don't get to say that every day. Welcome.
Evening, Mayor, Council. We were approached by AmeriGas Company wishing to install a 1,000-gallon propane storage tank on Tractor Supply's property south of town. They were inquiring about any permits required. The only thing that jumped out was 252.2.1, which is a storage permit required and to be approved by City Council. Basically consists of 3 items: the type of gas, which is propane, the amount, and then a site plan showing where it is located on the site. I spoke with Chief Kimsey. Apparently, it's only the second propane storage we have in town, Co-op being the other one. So he appreciated the heads up of where it's going. He did request that going forward, rural residential properties that have 50, 100, 250 gallon propane tanks go through the same process, because apparently they had a call a month or so ago and they were unprepared on a property for propane gas. So you will see more of these coming forward for your approval, just so that everybody's aware.
And I assume the fire department then keeps an active list of
Yep.
where those are, so that
They like to know what's there, what they're
Absolutely.
fighting.
Well, that
So.
makes a lot of sense.
And not just propane,
Yeah,
any fuel.
So you have no concerns with this?
None whatsoever.
Okay.
No, fire marshal had no problems with it either.
Okay, great. Any questions or comments from the council? Always like to make a motion to approve or?
Move to approve.
Move to approve? Motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
Alright, thank you. Item 5, consideration of the revised civil service rules and regulations. Chief Peters, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Just real briefly, we've had some issues getting our open position filled. We've had several opportunities where we've tested, and we're kind of learning by doing. We decided we wanted to go back and kind of tweak our current rules. Just some minor changes on face value, but in the end, we think it'll be beneficial for us in the long run. Changed a couple of definitions. When we're talking about lateral transfers, somebody that already is certified as an officer, or a reciprocal candidate, which is somebody who's certified but from another state. Previously, that was already required for them to apply and not have to take our written test. Well, we've added to that to include that they have to have at least 1 year of post-academy experience.
We had a few issues where people had certifications, but hadn't completed their field training. And this way that will prevent those folks from, they can still apply, but they would have to go through our entire testing process.
Is that just kind of to establish a minimum, a basis for qualifications
Yes.
as far as experience goes?
Right.
Okay.
Just so that we know, not only are you certified, but you also have some experience.
Right.
And after a year, you should at least be through your field training and a probationary period that they may be,
Okay.
have to go through at their prior employment. We're gonna change our actual test itself. Prior, we would use one particular testing service. We wanted to have the ability to look at other options. Still will require it to be a standardized test, and that the vendor will be approved by the Civil Service Commission before we test. Again, if we use a test that we're not really happy with, we can look at another vendor. Next tweak, again, based on some experience that we've had lately, if an application, or an applicant, fails a written exam twice within a 12-month period, they will not be permitted to test again for a period of 12 months from the date of their last failed exam. We're kind of referring to this as like a cooling off period. Let them decide if they want to keep trying, but we want to make sure that, okay, you've tried twice, maybe it's time to reevaluate what you want to do. And the last change is more of just an administrative type wording. When we talk about the exams themselves, the written exam, the oral exam, once they've been administered, the written exam is worth 40%, the oral exam is worth 60%. If they were exempt from the test by being certified, all 100% was based on their oral examination. We just changed the wording from 40 or 60% credit to 40 or 60% weight, just to show how much weight we're giving to that percent. We just felt that the word flow seemed to make a little more sense. Nothing else has changed. They still have to have at least 70%, either combined score, or for those that are just doing the oral exam, they would have to at least 70%, because both are great. And that was the extent of the changes, which were approved by the Civil Service Commission last week. These changes were done in cooperation and working with them. They agreed that this is a good direction. Again, we're just tweaking things right now. We're not doing any wholesale changes per se, but we're hoping this will avoid some issues that we've kind of been having in the last couple of testing cycles.
Thank you, Chief Peters. Any questions or comments from the council? Not anything on motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
Thank you, Chief. Item 6, fiscal year 2024 agreements with the Seward County Chamber and Development Partnership. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the consideration to share our annual report and request for a membership agreement and funding agreements for this new fiscal year. I'll start off by, I've already introduced myself, but I have with me tonight Mayor Patrick Kelly, City of Milford, and he's our vice chair currently on our board. You'll hear from him a little bit through my presentation. He also is a business owner here in town, and so he can actually share kind of both perspectives of his interaction with our board and organization. To start off, I want to say thank you to the Seward City Council for your investment of funds into our organization, and then also specifically to Councilmember Kaler for her involvement on our board of directors. She does an excellent job representing the city of Seward, and so we're grateful for her investment of time. I want to briefly display our public sector funding agreement with, briefly review our public sector funding agreement with the city of Seward, and display our compliance with this current fiscal year. And so we'll pass these around here. I think this is an important document to review each year because it really outlines the expectations of our relationship throughout the fiscal year. So we'll be looking at the top part of that document and eventually get to the back here throughout the presentation. The funding agreement was signed from October 1 of 2022 through the end of this fiscal year here, happening soon next week. The city's annual investment was $71,611 in our organization. For the fiscal year 22-23 was spent towards the operations of SCCDP and according to Nebraska state statute. The public funds were and are segregated in a separate bank account. The funds have only been used for the purposes of economic development. There has been an annual audit conducted within 60 days of June 30th of 23 to ensure compliance with the agreement, and proof of that audit was emailed to you last week. Also, we had an additional independent audit conducted at the beginning of 23, and we emailed you a copy of that on June 8th, 23. We'd like you to consider renewing your support of economic development efforts in Seward County through entering into a new funding agreement and public membership agreement with SCCDP for your upcoming fiscal year. I'd like to briefly highlight some of the economic development projects we've been working on in this current fiscal year, 22-23. So that's the second document that you see. It'd be the third page of the handout. These developments have taken place all across the county and are highlighting just a few of our recent projects. I think it's clear that you can see that Seward County continues to grow. I'd like to point your attention to one quote in particular from Nathan Foster, who is the Regional Sales Manager of WCR in Seward, which recently constructed a new facility in the Seward Rail Campus. Here's Nathan's quote. He says, "For us, logistically, it made a lot of sense to come to Nebraska. We have been discussing it for years. Nebraska has been trying to get WCR here for 18 years. Once we started the process with Jonathan and the Seward County Chamber Development Partnership, it made choosing Seward as our location to build a very easy choice." Wanted to share this quote because I think it does a nice job of articulating the various ways that we can and we do help new businesses as well as existing ones to grow here in Seward County. And also want to briefly highlight the good and hard work of my teammates, Harrison Helmer, Jacob Jennings, Donna Hendrickson, and Joni Brechka. You get to see their work displayed through our quarterly reports. Really couldn't have a better team at our organization, and so grateful for their work throughout the year. And on a personal note, just feel very fortunate to work in our jobs, grateful to get to do something in a place that I call home. And so I've been doing this work 11 and a half years, and just grateful to be able to lead this organization. I'd like to have Patrick Kelly talk briefly about his role on our board of directors, the progress he's seen in our organization, and why both the City of Milford and Lavander's Body Shop both choose to invest in SCCDP. Patrick.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I first want to just say thank you all for what you do. It's thankless work being a council member, being a mayor of a small community. I know that personally, and so I just appreciate what you guys do both for the City of Milford and for Seward County specifically. Like Jonathan said, I serve on the SCCDP board. Originally, I came onto the board just kind of serving under the City of Milford and kind of worked my way up as the secretary, and then most recently as vice chair this last year. I started working with Jonathan probably 6.5 years ago as the mayor of Milford, and really just kind of looked at things that we needed to do. We needed to catch up. The City of Seward and other areas in the state of Nebraska are really hard charging and doing a lot of good things, and we were not doing very much at all. So partnering with Jonathan, sitting down and just kind of starting to have conversations and talks, we quickly got to work and started doing a lot of good things. You guys can come down and check out what we're doing. I'm not gonna bore you with all the good things that we've done in the last 4 or 5 years, but a lot of good things, and it's a credit to really what Jonathan has done and really helped us specifically, myself. Couldn't have done it without him. I wanna kind of brag on him a little bit, just because his organization is, to me, very fantastic, and we're lucky to have him here in Seward County. Councilwoman Kohler had worked for him for a long time, or for a while, and I felt like her role in that board or organization was very much, but his ability to recruit new talent, to me, is impeccable and amazing. Actually, he does have kind of a revolving door because people get promoted and move on to better jobs, but his ability to bring in very good talent and keep moving the ball forward for us, specifically economic development wise, is very, very impressive. Jonathan has continued to work very hard in a few different ways. SECDP has became one of 6 accredited chambers in the state of Nebraska, very impressive. But most recently, Jonathan passed his final exam to become officially CECD, Certified Economic Developer, through the International Economic Development Council. So if you don't really know what that means, Jonathan was one of 10 of 43 people who passed that test specifically, and there are roughly 1,200 of these individuals in the entire world. 1,200, and Jonathan is one of those people. So we're very lucky to have Jonathan and his team. I think specifically here in the state, in Seward County, when you look at other places across the state, see kind of what they're doing economic development wise. Child care has been something that he's very much been focused on. What we're focused on in the city of Milford, and I think what the city of Seward is probably also focused on, but also development, housing development. What are we doing there? City of Seward is doing a fantastic job of bringing in new homes. We're trying to do the same thing in the city of Milford, so we got a 54 lot development come in the last couple of years. We're really trying to catch up on the housing portion of it. Talked about a little bit about Rail Campus. I have a business down in the Rail Campus, so I partnered with Brian Levander to open up Levander Body Shop a couple of years ago. Jonathan started that in 2014. Unknowing to me, I was not going to be a part of that process because, interestingly enough, I was working at Ally Nationwide Insurance, which I kind of look around the room and see a few familiar faces. But this was something that I was not interested in at all. But my background was auto body. That's what took me to Milford in the first place, and I spent a lot of years in insurance specifically. So when that process started, I was not in the picture, but as my life kind of changed, I did get a call from Brian Levander and wanted to know if I was interested in partnering with him and being the owner and running in the Seward location. Jonathan had been working on that since 2014. Pretty amazing when you kind of learn these things after the fact, but that's just one example of kind of what Jonathan does. Like, he is constantly recruiting new businesses and working for us really in the county, specifically Seward here. But the Rail Campus has been a fantastic addition to, I think, the community and the county as a whole. And so that's kind of one of the things that I think is really exciting, both with your residential growth and the economic development that he's really kind of been a part of to bring. It's kind of a no-brainer to me that we wouldn't want to keep a guy in a company like that around and continue to invest in such a fantastic team. So I kind of went off kill a little bit, but those are really my main highlights of why I would encourage you to continue the support, to build into and grow into SECDP and Jonathan's team specifically. Any questions for me? Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. So to finish up here, thank you again for Seward City Council's past investment in our organization. Last year we asked the Seward City Council and other public sector members to make a 3% increase investment from what you made the year before. We are asking for a 3% increase from the Seward City Council this year because the cost of hiring talented professionals has gone up. And we're no longer eligible for a large grant that gave us the opportunity to expand into workforce development, specifically housing, like the 48-unit apartment building project that is proposed next to Pack and Save. You'll continue to learn about that here moving forward. And we have actually asked our other 3 public sector members with Milford, Utica, Seward County for that same increase, and we have received support from all 3 of those entities already. Even with this funding request, we still are operating in a budget deficit, so we really tried to be good stewards of the funds that were given as a nonprofit organization. And this year, our scope of services, ability to impact economic development in Seward County continues to grow. And we did add a new staff member, Joni Brechka, who's focused on marketing and storytelling projects that's outlined in our strategic plan. We had our public and private sector stakeholders really identify where they'd like us to move within Seward County. So to continue to expand Seward County, we need an increased level of investment. And the 4 public sector members' annual investments account for an important 30% of our total budget. So therefore, we'd like the Seward City Council to consider support of SCCDP for your upcoming fiscal year with the $73,760 investment. Thanks again for the Seward City Council's past investment and organization. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions or comments from the council?
Jonathan, what did you say the public investment was part of your total budget? What percent was that?
30% total. And I will say, we've worked hard on that. It was closer to 50-50, and we've continued to push on the private sector side, both on the membership side as well as non-dues revenue.
And I think that's paramount for economic development corporations to achieve that level of funding for the work that they do. There's cases and other stuff out there that make that a lot harder when you're so heavily private or publicly funded. It works a lot better making that public-private partnership and leaning it heavily on the private side.
Any other questions or comments from the council? And just to clarify, item 6A, this is the consideration of a membership agreement with the Seward County Chamber and Economic Development Partnership for fiscal year '24. Then the funding agreement would be B.
So can they be combined, or are they?
We would do them separate. So the first would be the membership agreement. And I'll say, Jonathan's done a great job, and the organization has done, a great job as far as supporting the city on a number of projects. A lot of, Jonathan will tell you, it's kind of like, recruiting in any sport or any other activity. You have a lot of misses and a lot of just inquiries that don't go anywhere, but those take time. And if we had to handle all of those ourselves within City Hall, it would be very difficult just because of the sheer volume. And you don't know how serious one of those inquiries are until you get down the road quite a ways, and you've helped them with the business plan, you've helped them with applications for different funding sources. And so by the time we see it at City Hall, it's already gone through a number of traps within their organization, and it does save a lot of time on our side, on our end of it. So that's what that's worth.
I think the other thing I'd speak to is a conversation that Jonathan and Jacob and I had in my office probably within the last year, where we really sat down and said, hey, where is the direction and the need in the community, and how does economic development fit into that? And the 2 topics that came up, which I think everybody here is obviously aware of, and anybody that reads the paper and seeing the work that Emily does and others, that is childcare and housing. And I will tell you 2 major projects, one of which you approved tonight in TIF, is going to help curb that a little bit. There's more that needs to be done. And then the housing project that will qualify for our workforce housing grants and things like that, that's coming down again over by Pack and Save. Those are tantamount to SCCDP and the work that they do between Jonathan and his staff. So we're really filling the very specific need, along with business recruitments, jobs, business retention, stuff like that. The 2 identified major needs of housing and childcare, they're explicitly tackling that, and I commend them for their work on that.
And that focuses obviously a lot on economic development. There's also the chamber component. That does take a lot of time as well. And we have a lot of volunteers in the community, obviously the 4th of July celebration, but there's a lot of other activities that take place. And while the volunteers have been great, you need some entity sort of backstopping that, because volunteers can come and go, and you need to make sure that there is a sort of a constant force behind that to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And when people do, transition out or transition into roles, that there's a common denominator there to make sure that all that is done smoothly as well. And so that's a big part. We focus a lot, obviously, in our meetings with the economic development side, but I would say the chamber side is just as important, because a lot of that goes to supporting the businesses that are already here, I think it's important that we don't forget about them and don't be always chasing the next recruit. We need to also, support the businesses that have been, in the community, in some instances, for generations as well. So that's a big part of it as well. So with that, any other questions or comments, or would there be a motion, regarding the membership agreement?
I'll move that we enter into the membership agreement.
Alright.
6A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Colton, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
And 6B would be the funding agreement.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Colton, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
Alright, thanks guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Item 7, update on the proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 budget. Greg?
Yeah, since our last meeting 2 weeks ago, we met and presented on the budget for about 2+ hours and walked through each department. I walked through the memo that's also included again in your packet. I received no specific requests for research or follow-ups in regards to the items outlined. I did send on the budget to AMGL, which is our audit and accounting firm that works with us on the audit and also fills out all our state budget forms. They gave us a draft of those budget forms that Sydney and I received. We looked over and made sure that some of it matched. They take that information, they put it in the public notice that should be in tomorrow's paper for our final budget hearing next Tuesday at our special meeting. Also, we have our postcard meeting. If you got your postcard in the mail this weekend or Monday or whenever the county got those out, that hearing is tomorrow at the Civic Center in the evenings. So there was a little confusion. I think the postcard said 6:30. I think the formalities start at 7. So we have quiz bowl in there. So forewarning, we're gonna try and get those kids out, but we just want to make sure that we have the. Well, they're ignore that comment. Just note that they're high school kids and younger, so, yeah, but we'll get them taken care of and clear out quiz bowl in time, and then get started with the hearing. Have a number of taxing entities, at that, and then an opportunity for public comment, from the public. And so, I can answer any questions or directives or what we would like to do, if we need more clarification, it's all kind of there. And then the final version will be available and out for the meeting next Tuesday, because that is the official city budget hearing.
Do you want to mention where we left off with regard to the capital projects?
Yes, there is a list of capital projects on page 6 of 6 of my memo. We noted in the general fund that we had a deficit of approximately $673,000, and I identified in the budget that equal amount of items in no particular order that the administration believed quantified to things that are not required and necessary to continue the form and function of the city. We're not taking away police officers off the street or those kind of things, but it includes asphalting the gravel roadways up in the cemetery. We can push off buying a utility vehicle or looking for other options there. We have a diving board issue that we think we can submit to insurance. Again, delaying golf hole number 5 pond renovations, pretty expensive line item there. We can push off or ask the library foundation to pay for some remodel and technology advances at the library, push off the archery range, or look for donations for that up by Plum Creek Park. Delay the replacement of a mower for a year. The bleacher expansion, look to the primary users of that field to see if they'd be willing to split or add to those costs. That was at the main softball field that's utilized by the high school in Concordia, just expanding the bleacher offering there. The concessions bathroom, this is the big ticket item. This is a renovation to the smaller, just south of the main softball field. That facility there, we would kind of renovate it and then also put in a new concession stand, kind of where the water fountain was. So it's more accessible, it's more just easily attainable and not cluttered. If you've ever had to sell concessions there, which I've had to help out a few times for baseball. It's pretty packed in there. And then those bathrooms just need to be renovated. They're not the worst. Again, they weren't built to ADA standards, and they were built years and years and years ago. And so we would do that through a renovation and moving of those concessions. But again, that's a big ticket item. We can still steal concessions and use restrooms up there for another year. It's just not ideal. And then 2 police items that could be delayed off. Look for donations potentially for upgrades on our bicycle fleet. Senior center flooring is looked at the senior center fund, and then a partial assistance from the billing funds for our rescue squad, which is also being funded by a grant that we do have coming in, so that project has to move forward because we have to fulfill that grant. So those were the items listed.
So the idea was, we had a budget proposed where those items.
They're currently in it,
They are,
correct?
yes, so those, but if you wanted, we wanted to provide you with the option for a balanced budget, which would have no deficit spending. Obviously, if there are priorities within this list for the council, you can leave them in, but we just wanted to at least give you that option, so, if you wanted to, you could remove all those items and it would be no deficit spending. The hope would be is that through the fiscal year, if we are able to have some savings in various departments, there may be some additional funding available in the following year to perhaps tackle some of those items. No promises, but that's kind of the idea behind that. So ultimately, it's up to the council how you want to proceed, but we thought it was important to provide you with both options. Because these are things that probably should be done at some point, but they don't necessarily have to be done now.
And I just to note, this is just in regards to looking at general fund revenues and general fund expenses. The street fund, we have street projects we have to get done in Revolution around Highway 15. And that project both on the front end and the back end. Back end, we can have some discussions, because again, we're not interrupting the roadway anymore. Ripping out brand new placed concrete that's the highway, the state just paid $10 million to put in. So that's why we're doing ours ahead of time, thus the Bradford and Park Street stormwater upgrades. And then the utilities are a whole nother ballgame as well. Again, 2 big ticket items on here, because I know that some people look at, wow, the total expenses are super high. The 2 big tickets are the Wellness Center, which has its own funding mechanism and will be bonded up, which we'll finalize here probably in the next 30 days. We had our second bond option come in, so now we have a comparable. And then potentially, what we have to have in the budget now is the bonding and construction start of the wastewater treatment plant. So when you get your notice of our expenses on your little pink card, it includes everything. It's all the utilities, it's all the general fund, the street fund, it's all in there. But those 2 items alone, that's a $32 million wastewater plant, and that's a $21 million wellness center that we didn't have in the fiscal year this year, so.
So yeah, so if you're not familiar with how those budget pieces fit, it looks like there's been a huge increase or an explosion in the budget, but really it accounts for those 2 main items is why it looks the way it does, so.
And those will be bonded projects.